What's good? What's good? What's good? What's good? Back with episode 9 of the Rebuttal. Yeah, what a week. What a week. What a week in the SIAC. Miles College took complete control of their own destiny uh, in beating Albany State, something they hadn't done since 2019. Uh, so big shout out to Miles College for finally getting over that hump. Y'all know I'm always saying that last year I felt like Miles College was the best team, was the second best team in the conference. And they just went to Albany State last year and just forgot how to play football and got blanked. I think it was 48-7. This Miles College team last year was 4 points away from being 9-1. So an extreme job by Coach Sam Shade and that Miles College team. This week it doesn't get any easier for them in a sense because they go to take on Clark Atlanta, in which is pretty much what you want to call an elimination game for Clark Atlanta. We'll get it. All right, because you look at the standings, Miles controls their own destiny. Clark Atlanta they sit at 1 loss. Fort Valley State sits at 1 loss. Albany State is at 1 loss. Tuskegee is at 1 loss, and Savannah State is at 2. If you've lost 3 or more games in conference play now, yeah, you can only hope to spoil somebody else's dream. You can only hope to spoil somebody else's dream. You're not going to win. You're not getting in with 3 losses. I'm sorry. Allen is done. Lane is done. Morehouse is done. Edward Waters is done. Central State is done. Kentucky State is done. Now, can they make some things more interesting? Yes, they can. They can make the conference, they can muddy the water, if that makes sense. The water can definitely be muddied in this SIAC race. But, the conference, I think, to start the season off, I believe that it was Miles and Fort Valley's conference, and the way it looks to me, I'm almost willing to bank money that the conference championship would probably be Miles versus Fort Valley. I would love for Tuskegee to get in there. I hate Tuskegee drop that game in Savannah State. If you don't drop that game in Savannah State, I think you can lose the Miles and you get a Tuskegee Miles rematch in the conference championship game. But I think how it sits now, Tuskegee would have to beat Miles in order to get that rematch. Like they have to beat Miles, and that's not out of the realm of possibility, but it's going to be a tall task. But that dropping that game Savannah State, it's just, that's kind of looming over you because you kind of hope that Savannah State doesn't lose to Albany State because, like, if it's a bunch of if you remember the tiebreakers from last year, they were kind of weird in some instances. So we'll see. We'll see as the conference is going down to the wire. And this week we have the Miles versus Clark Atlanta game. I think that's the biggest game. I think that's the biggest game because basically if Miles wins this game, I think Miles is a sure in. I think Miles is a sure in if they beat Clark Saturday because the only game that you have a good chance of losing. You can lose any game, but I think You can lose to Tuskegee and still get there. So you beat Clark Atlanta to Saturday. You have Benedict and Morehouse that's standing your way. I don't think Morehouse is going to give you much of a fight, and Benedict may fight you a little while, but because you have to go to Benedict. But I don't think Miles has anything to worry about in a Benedict or a Morehouse. So you take care of business Saturday, you go into the championship game. Now, who you play in the championship game, that's the question mark. That is the question mark. On the other hand, I think for Clark Atlanta, you're playing not to get eliminated. The schedule fell really well for Clark Atlanta, but this block of games right here is what I was concerned about. I was concerned about this block of games for Clark Atlanta. When you looked at how the schedule fell, because now I did not have them winning the first game against Fort Valley. I did not. I think they overachieved in that, which is why I had them at 5 wins. If they get to 6 wins, then they overachieved because I didn't have you winning the Fort Valley game. I had you winning 5 games, but I didn't have you win the Fort Valley game, so that'll be your 6th game. Of course, they dropped the game Savannah State. Then they were in a tussle with Central State, and I think this theme keeps coming back when you play teams with better defenses, when you play teams that will play defense against you. Saturday, they're going up against what some would probably argue is the best defense in the conference in Miles. We'll see. I think Miles' defense is definitely, they're good. I won't lie to you. Miles College defense is good, and I think they're going to pose a different threat for Clark Atlanta. Now, just being upfront, I think this is going to be the first game we don't see this to be like a real close game. I'm not saying Miles just going to blow Clark Atlanta out, but I don't think Clark Atlanta is going to have a chance to win the game at the end, how they've had consistently, or to be able to win the game at the end. I think by the time we get 5-6 minutes in the fourth quarter, this game is going to be a foregone conclusion. And then Teddy Keating they get a week off, and then they have to play my Golden Tigers, and hopefully they get another L right there too. Right, but elimination game, never can count Teddy Keating out though. Teddy Keating I think he has a thing about making me out to be a liar. And I will be in Atlanta Saturday. I'm going to finally get to see the red turf for myself. It's Southern's homecoming. I said I was going to be at the Southern's homecoming, but I worked some things out, and I'm coming to Atlanta. I will be in the A. I'm getting there Friday night, actually. I was going to do a turnaround trip, get there Saturday morning, leave Saturday night. But I'm getting there Friday, and then I'm going to leave back out Saturday night. So I will be in the A to see Clark Atlanta play the Miles College Golden Bears. I saw Miles last weekend. They, in the Albany State game, met some watchers of the show, followers of the D2 HBCU page. It was good to see those people, and I always welcome that. Met Dr. Keller, the Albany State AD. Got to talk to Coach Sam Shade a little bit, and I actually was able to shake hands with Coach Gray after the game. You can tell Albany State, like they were really disappointed in that loss. So I'm hoping they can bounce back this week. Like you could tell, like they really wanted that game. So just hopefully that they're able to bounce back. We'll, taking a hard loss like that, I think they felt like that they could win. I think they felt like that they wanted to win that game. But yeah, I think the road's a little bit tougher for Albany State because they have Savannah State left and they have Fort Valley State. And I think those are two games that there's no guarantee that they can get those games. Yeah, that in that Fort Valley State game, I keep saying I think Fort Valley State is the best team in the conference, bar none. I mean, I don't think there's much difference between the Miles team and Fort Valley team. I know y'all saying, well, Fort Valley already lost to Clark Atlanta, and you're thinking Clark Atlanta is not going to win the Miles game. So, yeah, it's just one of them things with Fort Valley. Sometimes you they consistently not show up in the first game and then play around with teams. So we'll see. We'll see about that Fort Valley game. But right now, I think my picks of saying that Fort Valley and Miles is going to be in the championship game is pretty safe at the moment. I'm still there, but all while rooting that Tuskegee somehow makes it. But if I just got to pick today, if I look at teams, I really think the SIAC championship game is going to be Fort Valley State University versus Miles College. But we'll see. Hopefully, Tuskegee can find a way to slip in there. And then we'll get a Tuskegee. I don't care if we get a Tuskegee Fort Valley game or a Tuskegee Miles game. I don't care. Either way, either one is fine with me. For Tuskegee, the road is a little more interesting because you get a hot Kentucky State team Saturday, and Kentucky State is coming to Tuskegee, so we're gonna see, right? Like that's a really hot team. Like they're finding ways to win, but I just think the Tuskegee defense is gonna be able to shut down that Kentucky State offense, and I think that our offense will be able to score the ball on Kentucky State. I think we're gonna be able to run the ball really well on Kentucky State. Then we have Central State. I think that's the one that scares me the most because we have to go to Wilberforce. But I think if we can get the Wilberforce game, and then then we get Teddy Keaton and the Pyru Panthers, as people call them. Hey, we'll see what happens. Then we go into the Miles game, and we got Miles for homecoming, so that's gonna be interesting. Them boys got to play for pride, but we can get them. So, like I said, Albany State, they got Morehouse next. They should take some of their frustration out on Morehouse, and they got Edward Waters, and I just don't know what they expect from Edward Waters. And I'm not really just writing Edward Waters off, right? To say that Edward Waters can't compete in that game. I think Edward Waters is going to pose a type of threat to Albany State that if I got to pick, I think Edward Waters can kind of knock Albany State off a little bit. I think that's a game that Edward Waters can win. Just looking at that Albany State team Saturday, yeah, I think Edward Waters can get them because you got to run the ball on Edward Waters, and I'm just not sure Albany State is up for running the ball like that. This schedule is a West Alabama schedule, and when we talk about how good this Miles team is, Miles lost to West Alabama by a point that they should have had. They missed 2 PATs. You hit one of the PATs, you go to overtime, you hit the other one, you win this game. I think West Alabama is ranked number 11 in the country right now in D2 football. And that Miles defense was able to shut down a really high-powered, high-octane type of offense in West Alabama. So they've seen a high-powered offense before, and they've been able to contain it. And I don't think that Clark Atlanta's defense is as good as West Alabama's defense. So we're going to see Saturday. Saturday might be a long day for the Pyru Panthers. A long, long day. I thought I had the schedule for next week up. And I don't. Yikes. Well, anyway, so that's just how the stand is. Fort Valley State, they go on to play South Carolina State. Yeah. That's going to be a tough matchup for Fort Valley. But it depends on which Fort Valley shows up, right? I think South Carolina State is a good team. You look at what South Carolina State was able to do to Fort Valley last year, and you just gotta know that team has gotten better. But hey, I'm not totally writing Gibbs off in this Fort Valley State game with South Carolina State. I personally don't like this game this late in the season just because it's an FCS D2 matchup and you want to keep people healthy. You know what I'm saying? Like, you want to keep your guys really healthy. And I'm just so afraid of Fort Valley making that a game. And it's so, in my opinion, either I want South Carolina State to just take over this game really early, or Fort Valley to take the game early. And the reason why, because I don't want a dog fight. I don't want a fourth quarter dog fight. Kelvin Doom has been able to stay healthy this season. I don't want to see Fort Valley lose any quality players playing this late FCS game, and your season is still in front of you. Like, your season is still in front of you. The SIAC championship, possible D2 playoffs possibilities. Like, this game is a little too late in the season for me. I don't like it. I just don't. Yikes. I do not like this late FCS game. It's too late in the season. It's too late. This is a game that can derail your whole season. Whoever scheduled this game, don't do this no more. Don't schedule a FCS team this late in the season. The FCS team, they've hit their stride. They're peaking. You're trying to peak. You're trying to keep your goals to goals. Like, everybody should be over the FCS losses by now, right? Everybody should be over the FCS team, their money game team. Like, it's time to focus on conference play. And then here you guys are stepping outside of conference play to play up. And your future, like, I don't know. I don't like it, and I hate that. God knows I hate that. Well, so I mean, Savannah State, we're gonna see. They beat the team from California. We'll see what they're able to do, right? Am I still sold on Savannah State? No. I meant defensive wise, yes. Defensively, yes. But we'll see. They just want to. I mean, they're lurking. They have 2 losses. They're lurking. They can't take another loss. They can't take another conference loss. But they have 2 right now. So we're going to see. Benedict, yeah, I think that Kentucky State loss hurts. If you win that game, you're still in the hunt. But I think that loss to Kentucky State really, it is what it is. I think for them, can they get to 5 wins, right? I think that's Benedict's whole thing. And I mean, and it's tough because you still got to play Miles, you got to play Albany State. 2 teams that if you can knock off Kentucky State, I don't know if you can do those 2 teams. So, can you get the 5 wins is the question for Benedict. And then Central State, Central State, you're 4th and 1. You're 4th and 1. You get a chance because if you beat Clark Atlanta, your season is still alive. You're 4th and 1. Or you can kick the field goal with a minute some left, and you take a 1-point lead. That's too much time. That is too much time to give David Wright. Now, I know they probably saying, we take the lead, then we challenge our defense. We've seen David Wright do this too many times. How many times does what they say when somebody shows you who they are, believe them the first time? Central State, you should have believed who David Wright was. and they have a kicker that can hit it from 55 plus yards. I'm sorry, I'm not giving that ball back to Clark Atlanta. Now, if I'm 4th and 3, 4th and 4, okay, cool. I'm gonna take this. But 4th and 1, and I've been running the ball pretty decent. I'm going. I'm going for. I'm gonna get my 1 yard, and I'm gonna bleed 40 more seconds off that clock. I'm gonna bleed 40, 45 more seconds off that clock. I'm not giving David Wright the ball with a minute and some change left on the clock. Just not doing it. So that's probably something that's gonna hunt Porter. And then it's like, where does Central State go after this? Where does Central State go? They seem like they can't get over the 5-5 hump. It's like they're stuck. Cedric Pearl's best season was 5-5. Seems like Kevin Porter's best season is going to be 5-5 at Central State too. So they got some questions to ask themselves at Edward Waters. I meant at Central State. Edward Waters, of course, they got some questions to ask. I don't know where they go either. I think that they all felt like they would be better than they are this year. But can they finish the season off? Can they get to a winning record in the season? And we just don't know, Allen, they played some team close. They played Clark Atlanta close. They played Fort Valley close. They can't protect the quarterback in a discussion. They just cannot protect the quarterback. It is a problem. Do they win a game? Right? Lane. Lane has been right there fighting. You lose by 10 points to Miles. You lose 10 points to Tuskegee. It's like you're right there, but you can't get over the hump. You can't score how you need to score to beat people. I think there's a lot of questions around Byron Brown. I heard some people saying it's time for him to go. I think Byron Brown is the best thing to happen to Lane in a very long time. I don't think that people should be calling for him to go. I think sometimes the push that we have around firing coaches should be around strengthening our programs. I think some of the smoke that we have for coaches, because you all have seen what he can do, right? You've seen the glimpses of what he can do. You can see this Lane team. This Lane team is not a team that just gets blown out by teams. They remind me of Mississippi Valley, which brings me to the whole conversation. Lane reminds me, let me go all the way back. Lane reminds me of Mississippi Valley under the last coach that went with Deion Sanders, and I hope I got my facts correct. I hope I'm saying that right. Those Mississippi Valley teams were really scrappy. They would fight. Lane comes out and they give everybody a fight. The fight that Lane College gives reminds me of that Mississippi Valley. But nobody in Division II is saying, oh, Lane should drop down to NAIA. They have before. Lane College, they have dropped to NAIA. Same with like Edward Waters, they've dropped to NAIA, and then, they come back. But Lane came back, and what has Lane accomplished since then? Their biggest win is knocking off Tennessee State. I think that's a really big win. I think and for me, I think the ceiling is 5 wins at Lane. I think you win 5 games at Lane. I think with the current resources that they have, I think you've done a damn good job. But this brings me to this conversation. On HBCU Sports, Ken Rashad and Kendrick, and I think the other guy's name is Chris, and There's four of those guys over there, and I mean they do a good job at covering HBCU sports. I read them. I read all the HBCU pages, and I try to check them all out. You know, I listen to their live stream. Even if I don't listen to them at that time, I'll go and I'll listen to them later. And I mean, people have interesting perspectives. So the conversation that they had was, should Mississippi Valley go Division II? Should Mississippi Valley be a Division II school? And it always intrigues me when I hear this level of conversation about teams being Division II, right? And they were really careful to say they're not, because they're not looking at Division II as a step down. And they were talking about, because look how they've been getting whooped in different sports and how they end up last. And to me, it's the same argument as people make about teams who move up that are not winning. A lot of times, and hear me really well on this, teams moving up is not predicated on them winning. If that's the case, there are a lot of PWIs that sit at FCS or FBS that shouldn't be sitting there. Because winning is just not it can be an additive, but it is not a prerequisite for moving up. There are a lot of things that go into a team moving up. And so they go on and they mention two schools. Well, they mentioned three schools, but whatever. They mentioned Delta State being Division II, right? And I was confused. So this is why I titled this, what the hell are y'all talking about? Mississippi Valley does not need to go D2. Delta State, although they have some success in Division II football, they are an institution that is struggling. Okay? They are a struggling institution. I'm here to tell you, going Division II is not going to solve Mississippi Valley's problem. In my belief, it will make it worse. It will make it worse if they go Division II. If you don't believe me, they mentioned another school, Savannah State. Savannah State moved to Division II. What is Savannah State facing? Looking to close an $11 million budget gap ahead of next academic year. That's so interesting. Delta State, $11 million. Savannah State, $11 million. A lot of people see, Savannah State moved down. I can't talk about Winston-Salem because I don't know Winston-Salem because I don't look into it. Savannah State moved down, but that did not solve Savannah State's financial problem, because actually being Division I was not Savannah State's problem. I don't know why people think that. Being Division I was not Savannah State's problem. It's what happens is when you mismanage money and people have to come in and take over your programs and they start cutting costs, they just start slashing. But if the board that runs Savannah State really would have looked into it, they would have realized that Savannah State didn't gain a thing by coming back to Division II at all. Actually, the data would suggest that they got deeper in the hole. And a lot of people won't believe me, but I put together a slide for y'all people to help y'all out. I'm going to go to this for a second because I think this is really important. There are a couple of ways of thinking about athletics and financing athletics at HBCUs. And depending upon your leadership can be misguided. When I heard what Ken and them was saying, a lot of people around or in hold position at HBCUs feel that way. I feel they're wrong. There are too many presidents who talk really openly about that, who have crunched the data, and the data does not suggest what people say. So this is what the president of University of Idaho said about being FCS. I would imagine that for a lot of schools that are really struggling with enrollment, if they could find a way to double the size of the so-called non-revenue portion of the athletic department, they would make more money. They would make more money. Let me go back. Rewind that. I would imagine that for a lot of schools that are really struggling with enrollment, if they could find a way to double the size of the so-called non-revenue portion of the athletic department, they would make more money. What is he saying, Kendrick? There is a revenue stream that you will not find on most schools' audit, because the audits that we do, they're lacking this. And this is why our understanding of this kind of gets screwed. Let me go to the next slide to prove my point. This is Mississippi Valley. This is their athletic participation. I don't have my notebook, but I had it. But this is their athletic participation. They have 216 unduplicated male athletes, and they have 108 unduplicated female athletes. That puts you at about 349, something like that. This is their athletic related student aid. This is how much they spend. They spend about 800 some thousand on the men's and 500 some thousand on the female. Here's the kicker. That totals to 1.3 million. If I have over 300 athletes on my campus, right? And my tuition sits at about $11K. If I'm only putting out 1.3 million, I got almost 2.1, 2.2. These are really raw numbers, but about 2.2 million in generated tuition revenue that I'm receiving. I'm actually making money off the athletes that are there on partials in my non-revenue sports. Let's go back to what the man said. I would imagine that for a lot of schools that are really struggling with enrollment, if they could find a way to double the size of so-called non-revenue portion of the athletic departments, they would make, if I could add more sports, if I got 300 athletes now and I'm doubling what I'm putting in investment, I'm investing 1.3. I'm getting 2.2 million out of it. I'm doubling my money. If I double the size of my athletic department, I'm going to make more money because my tuition is going to up. And I don't know why we don't see tuition as an income stream. The same way I feel about the bands. How is Mississippi Valley supporting a 250 plus member band? They're not giving 250 scholarships because it is a tuition revenue source. It is a revenue source. And if we change the way that we're looking at that, it would change our perspective about why they don't need to go back to Division I. If anything, they need to start adding. Now, let's push this idea further. Another president, he says, in each sport, we ignored the cost of scholarships. as this was an internal cost transfer. When I hear people, and hear me good, down at Mississippi Valley and at the schools that do not fund their full scholarships, I don't know why. I think you're looking at it wrong. I think you're completely looking at it wrong. Why do I feel like you're looking at it wrong? It is an internal cost transfer. Schools that are not at maximum capacity. Schools that are not at maximum capacity. If you rethink and reconfigure how you think about college athletics, is there some real cost? Yes. But guess what? You're doing it anyway. You're taking 50 plus guys with you on road trips anyway. You're putting them up in hotels at away games anyway. You're already spending the cost. You're spending the real cost, but think you're making it up on the back end. There are a couple consulting agencies that really talk to universities about maximizing their scholarships, because there's a lot of data out there that does not support the way that our people feel about these institutions. Nobody feels this way. I don't know, like it somehow it gets caught up with us. But anyway, though a small number of student athletes might attend the UI, even if we did not offer their sport, we believe that more than 90% of our student athletes selected UI in a competitive academic/athletic recruiting situation because they could participate in their sport here. We make the simplifying assumption that the tuition revenue from all non-scholarship or partial scholarship athletes has been brought to the university by participation in athletics. Plain and simple, they see it as a revenue stream. And we don't see it as a revenue stream. We see it as an expense, and it's not an expense. But let's push the idea a little bit further. I am ready to go there yet. Let me go back. This is from their June 2023. This is from Mississippi Valley's financial report that they have to give every year. They got $9.7 million in tuition. And we just did the number. Over $2 million of that $9 million came from clearly the athletes that are not on full scholarships. The athletes that have chosen to go there, that's willing to go to Mississippi Valley because they're a D1 school, regardless. It's kids that left schools like Edward Waters to go to Mississippi Valley this year. Now you want them to reconfigure this. You want them to drop down when it is a revenue source. Of course, you're not going to see it. I don't even know if that administration see it like this. But if you break that tuition down and start talking about dropping it down, you're losing a revenue source that you're not even fronting that up. But wait a minute. Not only that, they bought up Savannah State. You might can't see this, but Savannah State, this is Savannah State when they were in the MEAC, right? And their tuition fluctuates in their income, and then there's a line on there somewhere. If you screenshot it, can look it up, and talk about intercollegiate athletics, and you'll see the revenue that they were able to bring in. And if you see the operating losses down at the bottom, you will see that those operating losses, the highest one was 30-some million, right? But I thought y'all said going Division II, right? This is Savannah State once they got in the SIAC. They were operating lost $47 million. They basically doubled their operating loss being in Division II. That's not the only reason, but what I'm saying is athletics is not what's causing you to have those problems. Athletics is not what is bankrupting your institution. I don't know why people think that. It's actually aiding your institution when you put it in the proper perspective. They didn't lose $47 million when they were in the MEAC. But now that you're in the SIAC, you operate at a $47 million loss. What side of the game is that? The data does not suggest that. And here's another component why they shouldn't go. Mississippi Valley and Alcorn, 7,000 people in Itnabena, Mississippi. Please tell me what Division II team that they're going to be able to play and get 7,000 people in their stadium. So not only are you going to lose in the amount of revenue that you're bringing in from a tuition standpoint, you're going to lose your gate revenue. I don't know what their attendance is when Jackson State comes, but I'm pretty sure it's more than what it would be if any Division II school went in there. I don't know what their gate is when Southern comes, but I'm sure it's less than when any Division II school comes. What you think they will gain, they will lose. Because here's the other component. When y'all talking about them coming to the SIAC, look at these trips. Now, these just car trips. These trips, you add 2 or 3 hours to these trips because they're bus trips. 9 hours. So you put that's like a 13, 14-hour drive on a bus from Edward Waters. In Savannah State, make that a 13, 14 hour. The Tuskegee, make that an 8 hour. What do you gain? You're going to lose. You're going to lose gate. You're going to lose. Mississippi Valley will be in a worse shape going Division II than they are in Division I. Are there some institutional things that Mississippi Valley can look into? Yes. Because there is a school that they all can learn from. Let me go here. Mississippi College is a private institution that's in Division II. They have right at 5,000 students. They were struggling 2 years ago. They were struggling 2 years ago with 3,000 students. Now they have 5,000 students. Can't hardly fit them at a private school. That is more. Because what did they do? They got rid of useless majors. They made their school accessible to people because Mississippi, like Alabama, like a lot of states in the South, they have a problem with there are a lot of people, okay, and they hadn't even focused on us. There are a lot of people who have not finished their degrees. Look at the census data. If I'm Mississippi Valley, I'm leaving Division II is dumb. I mean, leaving the sweat, that's dumb. To go Division II, I'm not gaining anything I'm not gaining anything. It's still going to be a loss. Actually, it's going to be a bigger loss when you factor in the tuition revenue that you're going to lose. My guy, Nick Eden, that runs the HBCU calendar, he posted this. And he posted this article, how to go back to college after dropping out. If I'm Mississippi Valley and I'm looking at the number of people who have not finished their degrees. Our institutions got to get creative and shape to be, when our ancestors founded our institutions, they founded them to solve a problem. They founded them to solve a problem that Black folks were having. If our institutions want to remain relevant, dropping to Division II ain't going to help Mississippi Valley. How can we best serve the people that we were how are we going to best serve the people that we were founded to serve? And how do we grow? How do we grow out of that? If I'm in Mississippi and I see that this large number that the census data just put out, you can search it, the new educational metrics that was in the new census, all those people that have not finished their degree, they have some education. Some of them, and one of the statistics was like, it was like 40-some% of people in this Alabama now, 40-some% of people only had about 10 hours to finish their degree. If I'm Mississippi Valley and I need to grow my size, grow my school, one, I'm building my own line, like University of West Alabama in Livingston. The majority of their students are online. Same with University of West Alabama. I'm building that component up. And while I'm building that up, I am going to target working class Black people who have not finished their degree. And I'm going to target them extremely well. I'm going to throw everything I got to boost my enrollment in that way. Because the answer is not going to Division II, because right now, that revenue from those partial scholarships, those people who come there just to play, it's too big of a revenue source for me. It's too big of a revenue source for me to lose. I can't lose that revenue source. I also can't lose the revenue source of the people who come when we play an Alcorn, or when we play a Southern, when we play a Jackson State. You can't afford it. You can't afford it. Bluefield. So, okay, so I'm gonna say this, and I really hate getting into SWAC business, to be honest with you. So here's the thing. I don't know if y'all remember, this is probably like 6-7 years ago. Alabama A&M was getting ready to go on probation for something that they did. And they wrote a waiver to the NCAA and was like, hey, don't deduct our practice time and our scholarship numbers because they had a game with Auburn. Now, this was years ago. This ain't here recently. And NCAA agreed with them. You'll look at some of those Power 5 schools of those money games. They won't play a Mississippi Valley, right? And I think there is some NCAA, like it's real tricky about when you're not funding at that level if they can play you. So I think they have to be really careful about doing that as far as the money game is concerned for Mississippi Valley. So it gets a little tricky. But like I said, I think Mississippi Valley, there's ways they can go about doing it and get better at it. Because like I said, the school of thought that I study, the school of thought that I believe in is that it's not cutting down, because we've seen costs. Costs don't help you. Savannah State dropped down. They're still $11 million short. Go back to it. Still $11 million. The deficit now is bigger for them than it was when they were in the Why? Because you get 36 scholarships, right? If you already funded, let's just say they fund at 40, you're going to cut down. You're going to cut down the amount of athletes that you can get on your campus. That's less partial scholarship revenue. That's less partial scholarship money from a lot of teams. And then not add the ad revenue money that comes, I mean the media rights money that comes from the SWAC and the NCAA basketball. Listen, they would fare worse. Their travel would be hella extensive come to Division II. And I'll be honest with you, if I'm a president at the SIAC and they try to bring Mississippi Valley, the answer is hell no. The answer is hell no. Why would we bring them? Why would we bring Mississippi Valley? Look at those trip times. These are car trips. It's not even bus time. We're gonna spend $30,000, $40,000 to go play Mississippi Valley. Between the hotel stay, the travel, the food. We're gonna miss that. I hear you, but I still disagree. Your loss of revenue is going to be too great. It's going to be too great for you to lose. I think they need to rethink how they look at funding. I think a lot of our schools need to rethink how we view funding. I think sometimes we don't have the best answers for that. I go back to my guy. And when I tell y'all, I'm a disciple of his. I'm a disciple of the president of Idaho. I'm one of those ones. I am not. I always look at scholarships being a ledger note for an accountant. If you're not a school that deals with max occupancy, if you are a school that only has a certain number of slots where you can't house another student, where you don't have another class you can slip a student in, your food services contract is at max. I'm not buying the reason why you can't. It's an internal cost transfer. And if you compare that with the amount of students that are on partial that are paying students, in Mississippi Valley case, you're getting almost, like I said, these are really raw numbers and just the little data. From looking at their participants at 340 something, you're only giving 1.3 in student aid. Your tuition is around 11 million. We see that your tuition is around 9.7. 2-point-some million of that money comes from kids who are on partial athletic scholarships. It is a revenue source. And it bothers me because talking to a lot of ADs, they don't read enough. And I ain't trying to talk about some of them. A lot of them don't read enough. They don't even know the main data points that I like. There are people who write about college athletics, not from a PWP5, not from a Power 5. A lot of them can call off Power 5 people who write. But there are people who sit around and crunch these numbers all the time. And they look at it. And then they like, oh, we should do this. Why? The NCAA gives you trends. It gives you trends. There's nowhere else that Mississippi Valley can go and get 7,000 to 8,000 people that show up to their game, leaving the SWAC. It would make no sense. It would be suicide. It would be suicide. There's no one else they can play. So people want them to lead us, drop out of the SWAC, lose the gate money, lose the media rights money, lose the possibility of the NCAA money, lose the illusion of being Division I, because that's what it is. We can't pretend like D1 or bust is not a real thing. It's a real thing. We want them to lose that. We want them to lose the amount of scholarship that they can spread over guys to get more and more of that partial scholarship. We want to lose all that revenue stream because people don't think about athletics from a partial revenue standpoint. We want to lose all that just because they're losing. If that's the case, half the schools need to leave Division II because they're losing too. I don't think your university, and to be honest with you, because like I said at the beginning, I think Lane College reminds me of Mississippi Valley. When the other guy that was at Mississippi Valley that they used to play teams really close, it wasn't that long ago. He went with Deion Sanders. When I look at Brown's teams at Lane, they play schools really close. Like they play teams really tight. They can't get over the hump. They can't get over the hump because they are limited. But come Division II ain't gonna help you. The Division II teams, they're struggling. They're trying to find revenue sources. The travel is rough. The GSC, they're on their last. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, Vincent Danson. Delta State, they're struggling. Savannah State, it didn't help them. If they go back and really look at their data and separate that data point, see, sometimes our trustee boards, they get these crunch data and people just put them, if a lot of people would be able to separate and see. I mean, I feel like this is the problem with the value of our bands too. Remember that conversation was happening last week, a week before last. They was having a conversation about Tennessee State's band. And they was talking about, our bands need to this and that. If our institutions could literally see that those bands are a revenue source. If you got a 250-piece band and you only giving out 50 full scholarships spread around, the amount of money you're investing, you're doubling, almost tripling that money back. Honestly, Delta State needs to go D1 to help boost their enrollment. I mean, I agree, and I agree to a certain extent, but we just saw Mississippi College's Division II. They just took their enrollment to 5,000. One of the things that Delta State is going to have to do is they're going to have to get, like, we have to go through. We're going to have to go through our course catalogs, get rid of these majors that don't serve purposes. I just told you, like, there is a new census data point. You can Google it, like the educational data point from the census. It's going to tell you. It breaks down the amount of Black people who have not finished their degrees. You can dig so much deeper into the stats, the data. It will tell you that there's a high percentage of people who look like me who they're only like 10 hours away from graduation. Now, you know, most of our school has that rule, right? There's the rule. There's a what you call that? There's a residency rule. There's a residency rule that that says, like, you got to get 30 hours from the institute for their grant you. Listen, it's 2024. It's Mississippi Valley. Cut that down to 15. Cut that down to 15 and let people come finish their school degree at your school. Why y'all think Deion Sanders graduated from Talladega? Anyway, you got to work on that. You got to provide a service. Yes, Mississippi Valley has their problem. I lightly went through their finances. I lightly went through their academics. Yes, I lightly went through it. And dipping out of the swag is not the answer. It's actually going to cost them more, because then where do you go? That's almost like people who want Florida Memorial to come to the SIAC. Why? What? This is about making money, or at least being sustainable. Um, there's a lot that Mississippi Valley probably needs to do, but leaving the sweat at this point, no, don't be that. Don't be that. Don't be that school. It hadn't bode well for none of the rest of the schools that did it. I don't know. Maybe Winston-Salem, Stephen Gaither could best tell you that. Like I don't know. That's not a school that I look, because I don't understand North Carolina. I don't understand North Carolina politics, and so for me it's Alabama politics. I don't really get into Mississippi politics either. I am an Alabama, and I slightly look over at Georgia politics because so many schools in the conference are in Georgia. And so I'm pretty sure there are some hurdles that we hadn't discussed here. So let me get that disclaimer. I'm sure there are some other hurdles that we did not discuss. But from the very outside looking in, I think to say they need to drop is a very premature position to take. Without having ways, if you cannot tell me how you can make them up $2.2 million, because, okay, let's say you cut the $1.3 million down, right, in student aid. You cut it down to $800,000 to come Division II. Where are you going to get the other $2.2 million that they currently making? Where are you going to get it from? It's too big of a drop. It's too big of a drop. No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I don't know where the hell they could go. Like I said, there is nowhere in Division II that they can go to get what they're getting now. I think that they should fund more. I think they can fund more. Just looking at from the 2023 and the 2022, which I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna say this with a little bit of hesitancy. There are a lot of schools that are going to be in for a real big awakening. And I talk about this all the time. Post Trayvon Martin, the other break, post George Floyd, there was a lot of giving to HBCUs. I'm always talking about some HBCUs won the headline story and some HBCUs made real moves. There was a lot of talk. Like Tuskegee was one of those institutions that paid off their debt with all the COVID money. Like the debt became a thing. They put themselves in a good financial footing to move forward, to make better decisions. Some schools didn't. When Talladega, and y'all can go check this because I ain't gonna tell y'all no lie. When Talladega was on here talking about their gymnastics scene, and they were saying that they were lacking money, I didn't feel sorry for them, and I'm gonna tell you why I didn't feel sorry. Anytime you take on your audit, on their own audit, the year before that they got that $20-some million, right? Their payroll was like $700, $800 some $1,000. The year after they got that $20 million, like their payroll jumped to like $9-10 million. It's on the audit. You can go look at it yourself. What would jump your payroll from not even $1 million to $9 million? Y'all went crazy. Y'all went crazy. And you expect, and because most people don't dig like that, they don't read enough to look into it. Now you out here telling, oh, we got to cut this. No, well, the problem is too many folks walked away with their pockets filled up. That's the problem with a lot of our institutions. Our salaries, and if you don't want to go dig that deep in your audit, pull up your 990 form. It's going to tell you, it'll show you your complete salaries. And with those salaries also come your pensions, right? We don't talk about like how the pensions weigh down on your budget in the long run of things. They weigh down, they drag your institution. They drag institution down. They drag cities and municipalities down. And you have to be able to rein those in. You have to be able to bring those ideas, bring those costs in. Because one of the things you want to do, especially at state-funded schools, anytime your state appropriations have to go into your operating budget, you're behind the eight ball. You're behind the eight ball. And if you can ever get that kind of balance where you're not going so deep into your appropriations, the schools that do that well, you see them progress. The schools that are not doing that, they're not progressing well. Camp out in your school audits. And if they don't have them, call them. Tell them to send it to you. Especially your public schools, they got to do it. If you're a private school, guess what? They have to file a financial statement with the state. Go to your local probate office. Get it. Look at it. It'll tell you. It'll tell you. It'll tell you. I'm not gonna say that a lot of our administrations think that their alums are dumb, but I'm not gonna tell you that they think that y'all gonna dig. I don't think that they think that people look. I think people should go to jail at Talladega. I mean, they got the president there that's trying to fix it, but I really think that last president, I really think he should go to prison. I think what they did was it's sad. It's sad what they did. And it went unnoticed, right? Because who cares? Who cares? Kentucky State is trying to fight back now from a president that was just spending all their money, flying out every weekend to a different, like, chartering private jets. You got to care. You got to get into your alumni association. You got to say, you got to read. You just can't go off. And I know, like, I'm on Twitter too. I look at a lot of stuff, and I read a lot of people's opinions. I read them now. I look at them. I'm just like, yeah, keep reading and read other people. There's so much to learn. Like, there's so many different. There's not one school of thought. And I'll say this, and it's an hour. I said it's going to be a short show. Every HBCU has their own set of problems because of the geographical location we sit in, the communities in which we live in. And I'm one of those big people that say all HBCU problems are not the other HBCU problems. And your school has their own set of problems. Each of our institution is a living organism. It's not dead. Too many times we speak of HBCUs as some dead idea, some dead concept. It's dead, but it's not. It's almost like when we talk about the Constitution, right? You hear, and this is me being real loose here. When you hear Democrats talk about the Constitution, they kind of talk about the Constitution from a standpoint that it's evolving. You kind of hear Republicans talk about the Constitution as some concrete document that is dead. It's just there. It can't evolve. And sometimes we can be too conservative on our own campuses, and we view our institution as these dead types of institutions, and they can't be dead. Because when they dead, they die. And I'm here to tell you all, your institution can die. None of our institutions are exempt. The PWIs are not exempt. Our institutions can die if we don't keep a close watch on them. Everybody can't be your friend. All of them, everybody don't like me around HBCU spaces. Especially, we start talking about our own institution. Because some stuff, it got to be called out. It got to be stopped. You got to pay attention. Join your alumni association. Join them. Join the Zooms. Because I promise you, sometimes the people that's currently over them, they be out, they don't know what they be talking about. So we have to push our institution. We have to push our institutions forward. We got to push them forward. We got to stay on them. Stay on them. Because people can come in with the same mentality. Sometimes we can hire people with the same mentality that I see. You know, I'm talking to Dr. Cavill a lot of times. I tell Dr. Cavill, I think a lot of the stereotypes about HBCUs we perpetuate ourselves. We perpetuate them. Each state is different, right? I can't, like, I have no understanding of North Carolina, the North Carolina system. I've read a couple of things. When I hear Steve and them talk about it, you know, I'm listening because I don't understand North Carolina politics. And so whatever is North Carolina's issue and their problem with their and how they fund their things, I think people have to be engulfed in what's going on there, right? I just think that has to be one of the things that goes on. Yeah, you know, Miss Griffin, it's interesting because, but it's never is you never hear people talk about PWIs being poor, right? When people talk about, because even when they were talking about Mississippi Valley going down, they mentioned Delta State as if Delta State is some, and we know that Delta State is still good. I mean, they're struggling. The institution is struggling, but they're still winning. You see, so there's not a correlation there. There's not a correlation there. When Tuskegee was winning those championships, and they had what you call that, mortgage every building on campus and was struggling, we were winning, right? We were beating Bama State. And now that we're debt free, are we winning? I mean, I'm just saying, like, there's some gray area to this talk. There is some gray area to this conversation. But PWIs don't have to contend with being broke. Birmingham Southern was broke. I found it interesting when Birmingham Southern went up for sale, and shouts out to Miles for buying Birmingham Southern. I think that was the best thing. Now, I don't know how much debt Miles probably had to go in to get Birmingham Southern, but some debt is good debt. If they do the right things by, I think that can be really big for Miles. I think that can almost double Miles' enrollment being in Birmingham. I definitely did not want them to allow A&M to get that. I felt like A&M getting Birmingham Southern would have decimated Miles College. If Alabama A&M was able to get that campus. So I think it was a great move, and I didn't care what it was. Now, when A&M made that offer, and I want y'all to be very clear about this, and this is why I don't really care. Why I don't really care about a lot of Twitter talk. When Alabama A&M made that initial offer, y'all can go back and Google it. They told them, we'll give y'all so much money, then we're going to go to the state and we're going to ask them to give us the other money. When I read that, I said, them folks got to be crazy. Birmingham Southern went to the state legislature themselves and asked them folks for that money. And they told them no. And y'all going to tell them, sell us the campus. We're going to give y'all this amount of money. Then we're going to go get the rest of the money from the state. That was a slap in them folks' face. Them folks weren't finna sell y'all that. They wasn't finna sell y'all their campus. And y'all tell them y'all going to go to the state and get the money. And the state wouldn't get them that money. Come on now. We got to be better than that. Delaware State did the same. Yes, yes, they did. They did. I think that's really, really big. I was up at Miles Saturday, and yeah, Miles is like they're landlocked. I don't. If you've never been to Miles College, they are landlocked in Fairfield, and it is, whoo, right. It is. I think it's a good move for Miles, and I don't know what it is. And one thing about Miles is one of those schools that I can't get in. They board of trustee meetings. I don't like that. Maybe I need to send Dr. Knight. Maybe she'll let me sit in if I promise not to bring it out. Yep, Darling College, they merged with Albany State in order to keep them from closing. Absolutely, I think that was and they also gave Albany State another campus. And if you look at Albany State's enrollment, Albany State needs a good president. That's all Albany State has missed. They need a really progressive person, and not just a progressive. They need a progressive person. This is a book. I'm currently reading Elijah Cummings' book, right? Because I was so interested, and I rest in peace to him. But there's a chapter in his book where I'm reading it and I'm saying, "Oh, Cummings, I realized why you weren't effective towards the end." Our ancestors now, yikes. Our ancestors were successful because they were always aware of where they were and who controlled the purse strings where they were. Our schools are going to have to really get into lobbying. There's a lobbyist position at the University of Alabama. I think it's like $400,000 for a lobbyist. Of course, we don't have $400,000 to pay a lobbyist, but lobbying is important, and it's something that we lack in. We have to really get in there and lobby. I can show a lot of people where there was a time where Tuskegee was getting more money from the state than the two state-funded schools, the Alabama State and Alabama A&M, because Tuskegee's president had a good working relationship with the governor at the time, right? I think Albany State. I think Albany State is going to have to get somebody who understands that and can be able to work handed. I mean, I don't want to say tap dance for them, but you the wording has to be there, and being very much aware of where you are. Which, I mean, you can look at another school. You look at Clark Atlanta, and I'm gonna say this, and I'm really finna get off here. Like, I'm telling anybody, Clark Atlanta has to be on. People talk about Morehouse being on their way out. Clark Atlanta is on their way out, and not because of just Teddy Keaton. Teddy Keaton. I told you on the show before, I can't wait till they give me the commission to write the book about Dr. Payton. I'm gonna be honest with y'all. I'm gonna tell y'all who I wanted to be the president of Tuskegee. I wanted Condoleezza Rice to be our president. I think Dr. Brown is gonna do a wonderful job, but this is before him. I looking at where we are. Looking at where we currently sit. Alabama is a Republican haven. It is the Republican safe haven because, and I don't know whether people know this about Alabama politics. Like, Alabama is not that far removed from being ran by Democrats in the state house. Look at our Governor Ivy. She used to be a Democrat, and they switched over to Republican. Like, there was this big issue because the Alabama Education Association in Alabama had grown so powerful, and that's Joe Reed's organization, right? Like, they grew so powerful till they ran a lot of things in this state. And so I ain't got time to really just run it down about what happened. But Republicans and when Mike Hubbard came into power, if you don't know who Mike Hubbard is, please Google Mike Hubbard. Mike Hubbard, yeah, he was some type of guy. But Mike Hubbard took control of this state, and he had control of this state from a jail cell. They put him in prison, and there's an article talking about how Mike Hubbard was still running the state from behind bars. Okay, so I'll just tell you, like, it's yes, switch to survive politically. Switch to survive. Because there was an issue that happened between one of my friends, Dr. Cheney, asked me, he said, how come Montgomery didn't really paint the city black and gold for Bama State homecoming? And he asked me that in front of some people, and I was like, oh, I don't know. I think they did a pretty good job, because I don't, who he was in front of, I didn't want to have the conversation because I didn't think it was in their business. So when we got privately, I told him, I said, sir, do you know who the mayor is of Montgomery? He said, yeah, Stephen Reed. I said, do you know who Stephen Reed's daddy is? He was like, no. I said, Joe Reed. I said, you're not making the connection yet? He said, no. I said, what was the Don Oliver Acadome name before it was the Don Oliver Acadome? He said, oh, the Joe Reed Acadome. I said, yes. They scraped that man's name off the building. They sanded his name off the building. Okay. There was a political war that went on in Montgomery. A political war that happened. And it goes all back. And not just Dr. Boyd. A lot of people talk about Dr. Boyd, but it was before Dr. Boyd. Dr. Silver, before Dr. Boyd. It was a lot that happened. Dr. Silver was just, took his money. He left because he knew it was, So it is what it is. But, we have a lot of work to do. And so I tell everybody, join your local alumni association and be vocal, especially the younger people. Like, there are a lot of 70. The Lord God, the Tuskegee chapter, Tuskegee alumni chapter, every time they have a meeting, you know what they want to talk about? We got to get the Kellogg Conference Center open. When they did those public calls for president and they were talking about who we wanted to be president, yikes, I'm telling y'all. You need to join them. You got to replace them. You got to be involved. You have to be involved. You got to be involved. Got to be. And so if you didn't hear nothing else tonight, get involved with your institution. When I went to the Albany State game and Miles game Saturday, I had on Tuskegee shirt, and Dr. Kelly said, now you didn't have to wear Tuskegee. You could have wear some gold, baby. No, because that's all I wear. I will wear other school paraphernalia, other HBCU paraphernalia in the conference, but I'm going to be adorned in Tuskegee wherever I go. When I was in school at Alabama State, I wear Tuskegee. They'd be like, oh, you wear Tuskegee? I was like, but if I wore Auburn, you wouldn't say anything. If I wore University of Alabama on here, you wouldn't say anything. But because I wore Tuskegee, you got something to say. You got a problem with it. No, sir. No, sir. Not at all. I am 100% committed. I don't watch other sports. When they ask me, who you go for, Roll Tide or Roll Tide? What is that? I don't know what that is. TU, I'm not watching any other stuff. That's not for me. That's not how I get down. I see my institution in the highest light, and we should see our institution in the highest light. We don't need it. We don't need charity. We need commitment. We need people who are dedicated and supported to their own institution. I don't just check. I don't, be watching Alabama and Auburn and then, just checking to see what the score is for Tuskegee. Tuskegee and whoever we playing going to be on the big TV if I'm not at the game. Now, I am bypassing the game this weekend because I'm going to Atlanta. I'm being Clark, Atlanta for their homecoming to see Teddy Keaton and Sam Shade go at it, right? I wear North Carolina A&T and NCAA stuff along with other schools I attend. Absolutely. As you should. As you should. Because see, the exchange is not mutual, right? Here's the exchange is not mutual. The problem is we get in, but they don't give us anything. That goes back to when we talk about integration and we talk about what happened at with our best players going to, when we talk about our players going to the PWIs. There was never an exchange. There was never an exchange. It was, hey, you go over there. But if you go back and you watch, if you go back and look at, if you go back and you look at how our institutions used to be prior to integration, look at the little advertisements, right, for the games. Reserved seats for whites. They used to come to the games. They used to watch the games. You know, when I think about Crampton Bowl, matter of fact, because the white patrons didn't want to come in the same gates as the black people had to come through and enter the, if you ever been to Crampton Bowl, that bottom entrance, that's how black people had to enter Crampton Bowl, even when Tuskegee Alabama State was playing. And the white people entered the main Madison Avenue entrance. It's all there. The history is there. It was that they used to came, but there's no exchange anymore. They came, they saw what they saw, and they left. And we never had that exchange. There was never an exchange. So I don't exchange with them. I raise hell every time I go in the store. I told y'all last week I was going off on the Publix people because when I go in the store and I see University of Georgia, University of Athens. How that's helping you? How that's helping Publix? The people here went to Tuskegee, Bama State, Faulkner. Why am I looking at University of Georgia? It makes no sense. So we just got to be better. But that's all for episode 7 of Rebuttal. I appreciate y'all. Y'all can catch me in the A Saturday. Met a lot of, I met some people who watched the show and some other places from at the Miles game. So I remember my uncle when I was little going to the store for that. Yeah, because why would you not? Why would you not? University of Georgia is not the economic driver for a Publix in Montgomery. That's not how that works. That's not how that works. But anyway, I appreciate y'all for rocking with me to episode 8. I don't know what episode 8 gonna be. It's probably gonna be me gloating about who gonna win the SIAC. Because y'all know my two teams for the SIAC championship game is set. I believe is going to be Fort Valley versus Miles. Now I'm hoping my boys slip in there. I'm hoping they slip. I ain't, I may pick another team, but y'all better believe. Y'all better believe I'm rooting for these boys right here every day. But y'all be easy.